So yesterday we had the opportunity to talk with a number of practitioners and policymakers involved on sort of the vacant property reclamation side of the Cleveland challenge. So just yesterday, impressions from the tour, from the conversations with Kermit and crew.
I was really impressed by the level of passion and engagement among those people. I thought that was nice to see because, especially because so many of those people have been working on these issues for so long, to see that they're still passionate and engaged, I think is a great example for people who are moving into the profession.
Was there any particular person that stood out or sort of described?
Kermit Lind.
And what about Kermit's presentation yesterday?
For someone who's been engaged in these issues in this long and has had, and is where he's at in his professional life, he's still continuing to think in non-traditional or non-conformist ways about these issues. So he's not accepting an orthodoxy, and he's willing to interrogate issues forward.
I think that's true to say that he's a good example and very representative of that amount of passion, but it would be wrong to say he was the only one. The impression I got yesterday was pretty much everybody that we spoke to, including the various staff from the CDCs that were giving us the tours of their areas, that they're just so committed and energetic when it comes to wanting what's best for their neighbourhoods, and they're not prepared to just give up the fight, and it's very inspiring actually.
It's a really old neighborhood form. The number of small, really, really small structures that may tend to be on a lot, the narrowness of the lots, the narrowness of the streets, the number of streets that were, there's a lot of dead-end streets.
Very small lot sizes as well. They were smaller than I expected them to be. It seems like maybe something of a silver lining in the context of the current situation, because when some of the land in neighbouring lots is actually being given over, or divided between, I guess, neighbours on both sides, you're still not talking about these huge expansive lots that we hear about a lot in the States, these sort of massive single-family dwellings. So I think you would still have the kind of density you need to be developing transit and a sort of retail offering in these communities. So yeah, I was kind of, I guess, pleasantly surprised by that.
It's also just, it is an old model, and it makes your neighborhoods unique. And it's not anything that you would be able to build now. That situation with like those lots that have a house in the front and then a house in the back and a little tiny house behind it, a modern planning perspective wouldn't allow you to do any of that, and that's what makes some of those streets really interesting and quaint and gives them their kind of unique texture, is that situation.
One of the things I thought was interesting was, if you look at a lot of the commercial corridors, the amount of the structures that have almost 0-foot setbacks on the sidewalk, they're really truly urban form. And most cities don't have that kind of redevelopment opportunity to where they have these existing structures. They're looking at retrofitting, vacant and abandoned shopping centers or suburban in nature, which presents even more problems.
First, focus on your assets and focus on areas with the most potential and let success be from there, rather than focusing on a lot that has little to no potential whatsoever. So focus on the success and let it bleed out.
This is one of those aspects, but I think the sustainability side of it and green living is a major push, and I think that's one card that Cleveland can really pull. I mean, just flying in, and it's just beautiful fall foliage, and just the amount of green space is quite it's quite breathtaking, and the movements towards blots and this sort of new park space, green infrastructure, and as well as urban gardening is a real attraction point for those. I think that demographic, and it's not necessarily that it's hip, but there's lots of other of bonus cards to it. But
if people feel like their neighborhood's isolated, if there's no services, if you can't count on a bus to get you downtown, or you can't, or there's no easy way to walk downtown and there's no bike path.
Which neighbourhood was it we were in where they cut out the circulator bus?
That was true.
Yeah. You can't do that. It's, okay, I know there's budgets that are to be balanced, but it was Kermit was saying that they've kind of realised belatedly that you need to, you've got to look at the whole lot for things. So, okay, it's things like schools which are more difficult to fix that issue of inner city schooling, but you can't go cutting out well-used circulated bus services because, of course, one of the attractions of moving back into the city, the housing might be cheaper, but it's also that you don't need to be driving around all the time. So I don't know, it seems like a shame that they couldn't have found the money somewhere else rather than cutting out a circulated bus service.
What did you think of the judge's presentation, and how does the sort of housing court or the land bank and some of these other strategies fit into this equation?
I was very, very impressed by Judge Pianca, but the housing court is one of the things that I would be most concerned about, being able to, having it maintain its consistency, because he's got his experience and like the path that he took to become judge of housing court. I don't know that you could even replicate that.
Well, I would argue that I'm probably the least concerned about the housing court. I mean, it has been institutionalized and sort of created by the state legislature, so at least the structure is permanent, So even if Judge Pianca does move on, I think that the structure being so solidified hopefully will sustain the housing court.
Right. I agree with Lindsay, is that I think it's institutionalized here in Cleveland. But the challenge is, how do you transfer that institution, whether it's in the state of Ohio or beyond? I mean, I had the opportunity to talk to other housing court judges in Toledo and in Dayton, and it's a much more sort of hands-off, laid-back approach. But also their authorizing laws are not as expansive as the law that authorizes the Cleveland Housing Court. So you could, even in Ohio, take the Cleveland Housing Court legislation and try to expand it statewide in order to give the same power.
It's a great opportunity to be here and to take part in this Reimagining Cleveland initiative, and to see an actual city in this condition. It's sad, but we're just glad to be here and to be a part of this. So it's been wonderful so far.
And it's quite a privilege to be part of this process, and this obviously the creativity and imagination and passion that's here is, I think is inspiring for careers in urban planning in general, whether it's shrinking cities or not. Like, there's a lot to learn here.
And also important is for all the people who gave us a tour, enlighten us on about their neighborhood, and for Kermit and the judge and all those who were involved. We just thank them for their time and for their insight. So.